Hi, my name's Adam Chamberlain from Elite Pro Golf, and today we're going to talk about distance control with your wedges, specifically partial shots and with your kind of most lofted wedge, and how we can start to become more consistent. See, an awful lot of people that really struggle with this, and they always say, how can I control my distances? Well, the honest truth is, until you can produce a consistent impact position with the same launch angle, and you're going to be very difficult for you to control distance. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about how to do this. The second is how we can control the distance and then how to practice it. So let's get into the little bit of the technique. Now, the first thing we need to understand is we need to launch the ball on the correct loft every single time. So here's my 60-degree wedge, and that's the loft angle. We need to, at impact, be taking a little bit of loft off this. We need to launch it at around half the loft is a really good guide. Okay, so we're trying to launch it much lower than probably the loft, so the handle's going to be a little bit forwards as we hit this shot. Okay, now the other thing to understand is angle of attack. We need to make sure that we're not too steep and we're not too shallow, so we need to make sure that we are brushing the ground to taking a small divot after the golf ball. That's really important. Okay, so how can we do this, and what would we change in setup? Well, the first thing to understand is everybody's slightly different when it comes to ball position, weight, stance in their stance, but generally speaking, ball should be fairly central to slightly forwards. Some players can get better results with it slightly back, but basically let's start with impact. We're trying to get an impact position where our weight's forwards, we have shaft lean this way, and we've got a descending angle of attack, so the club is traveling down and through the golf ball. Now, we need to make sure that it's set up, and these shots, I don't really want you transferring too much weight, because what I see with most people, when they hit bad shots, they hit it heavy, they hit it too high most of the time, and a lot of that can be solved in setup because they haven't got enough weight on their lead foot or center enough at address. They tend to either start like a normal golf shot, too wide with their setup, they shift too much weight back as they go back, and then they struggle to then get all the way over in the correct position at impact. So what we're looking for at impact is all of our weight forwards like this, shaft is leaning this way. So on these partial shots, we're going to go a little bit narrower. We're going to make sure our weight's favouring our front foot ever so slightly, and we're not really trying to move weight off the golf ball much. Now, actually, if you use the body track, you would see weight pressure go towards the right foot. That is okay, but we don't want to get too far off it, because we don't want to make it really hard for ourselves to get a good impact position. So I find the more people can stay fairly stable here at address, it's much easier to then get onto the front foot when we're hitting it. And some people actually benefit from almost feeling like they're favouring the front foot at address. But again, that's individual, so we have to practice this. So start fairly even, ball middle, slightly forwards, and make sure that when we swing, we can get all of our weight back onto this front foot and produce that good impact position. If you were to video it, you want to make sure that you've got weight on top of the front foot, there's some shaft angle here, and the ball comes off pretty low for what most people expect it to do, but has an awful lot of backspin. Okay, and if you're somebody who struggles to stop the ball on the green, hits it really high but has no spin, it kind of bounce, that's because you're launching it too high. So check this setup position, look at the impact position, and video yours to see if it looks like this. Alright, so then we get into starting to control distance. Now, you can control distances loads of different ways, but one thing I will say is once you start launching the ball on a consistent angle, consistent kind of flight, and it's in the right realms of where we would like it to be, you're going to have enough backspin to stop the ball on the green, and then because it's a consistent launch, it's much easier to start to judge distances. So I've got a 52 yards shot here. For me, that's kind of going to be like my waist high shot with my 60 degree. Now, there's different ways of doing it. I'm going to talk about this. So I'm going to hit this 50-yard shot. I'm going to do exactly what we've talked about in the video. Weights on the front foot. For me, it feels a little bit on the front foot. Stand here, waist high. I'm going to turn through to the finish. All my weight's on my front foot. Come up a little bit short. So that ball's carried 47 yards. It's launched at 31 degrees, so slightly high of what I said is a rough guide of kind of half loft as a launch angle. So that's 31 degrees. And even on that partial shot, I've got well over 6,500 backspin revolutions. So that ball's got plenty of spin so that it can stop when it hits the green. And that really is one of the keys to being able to control distance. Being able to get the ball to bounce and stop on the green fairly quickly. Okay, now especially around Milton here, we've got very small greens, we're going to need some backspin to stop the ball on the green. So especially with the speed they're at the moment. Okay, so how can we control the distance? Well, if we've got a good impact position, really all we're trying to do is make different lengths in backswings. That's a common one. So for me, I kind of got a waist high roughly here. I have a kind of chest high feel, and then I have more of a shoulder high feel. So that's how I kind of do it. Some people tend to always make sure they go to a full finish. That's probably one of my biggest keys, is make sure whatever the length of backswing, you always go to your full finish. That should enable you to have the same impact every single time. Other people don't do it like this. Other people use percentages or feels, and they just simply practice distances a lot. And that's really, really important. So if I said to you now, right, I'm going to try and hit this ball 75 yards, I've got a pretty good feel in my memory bank for what 75-yard feels like, and I'm going to try and hit that shot. And this is the key to this wedge game. Okay, I have a feel for what I think is 75 yards. We're woefully short on that one. That's 63 yards. You can tell I've definitely not been practicing. But what I'm trying to say is you need to practice these. Once you've got the launch angle right, practice the feels and the distances. And remember, a certain feel should not go a certain distance. What you actually need to do is practice the right swings consistently. So I would advise everybody to have at least 2 swings with their wedges, if not 3. So it could be a waist high, could be a shoulder high, could be a chest high. Now pick 2 and practice those swings and get consistent with those swings over and over and over again. Now before you measure them, just get used to striking them consistently, the flights consistently, then hit the position or the feel that you're trying to do, then measure it. How far does that actually go? It doesn't matter how far it goes, it just goes that distance for you and that swing. And if you can consistently repeat it, and then you've got the other length, you've now got some weapons, because when you change clubs from 60 to say your sand wedge or your gap wedge, you've now got different yardages and they're going to cover. The biggest key with wedge play is being consistent. Be consistent with your impact position, be consistent with your length of backswing, and be consistent with how the ball comes off. And if you practice that consistently and don't change it too much, I promise you, you'll be dialing those wedges in, saving shots around the greens, and hello, even on par 5s, making more birdies. So let's try this. Let's improve our wedge game, and I promise you this was one of the keys to lowering your scores.